Gasp! Ladies and gentlemen, behold! I have finally mastered my quirk, perfect balance! I'm balancing this toy of a bird on my fingertip. All known laws of physics stated it was impossible, and yet I'm doing it right before your very eyes! I shall conquer the world with this newfound power! Okay, so for the first time in a while, I can start off a My Hero Academia video without just completely freaking out, like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened! I mean, I just did it just now, but, you know, okay. So this is a good chapter. This is chapter 309, titled, Can't Be a Child Anymore. That's right, Izuku, it's time to grow up. It's time to become a high school dropout and become a vigilante fighting supervillains in the streets of Japan. That is your fate. It's just gonna happen to all of us eventually, it's happening to you right now. Alright, so, the fight with Muscular is over. It just ended there last chapter. I was a little bit dubious as to whether or not Muscular was going to get back up, because the whole point of this was like, alright, this is a villain that Izuku had a lot of trouble facing, you know, earlier on in the story during the forest camp arc, so it's like, how quickly can he dispatch him now? And so, he doesn't have Koda's water powers to help him, so it's like, what's Izuku gonna do? But, no, I think most people assume that Izuku was going to finish him off in the last chapter, but you just never know, right? So Izuku does, captures Muscular, brings him to the local police precinct, and just kind of skips out and just like drops him off in the smoke screen of the sixth user, which, by the way, yes, that was revealed last chapter, but I was so hype about that because it's like N, and I know it's not really all that hard to figure out because N's name was literally the kanji for smoke, and I'm like, okay, so he probably has some kind of smoke screen quirk, and that actually fits a lot with the idea when Bakugo was looking at all the quirks of the past users, the ones that All Might could, you know, figure out, so the danger sense, the black whip, and the smoke screen, which I assume was also written in the book. He found out that, like, oh, none of these quirks were really, like, crazy powerful, and Bakugo talked about how his explosion was better than all of them. You know, they were just, like, support-based quirks, and true enough, in the last chapter, N even said something to the effect of, like, my quirk does not give, like, any ability for, like, a super move or anything like that. You know, I mean, I guess if you combine it with One for All, and, you know, it's added with more power to it, and you use all One for All with other quirks plus smoke screen, you can make some super moves, but by itself, smoke screen is nothing more than just what it is. It's a smoke screen, and it's still very useful, like we've explained before. Like, you could use it to confuse your enemy, but N even warned Izuku, like, you gotta be very careful when overusing it, because it seems like Izuku, really the output of smoke he can make, it's probably not infinite, but he can spread it across a very large area of the town or the city he's in, but it's like, if he does that, then it just makes his enemy also get the benefit of being able to track him down and catch him by surprise, because it's not like Izuku has the ability to, like, see through the smoke or something. That would actually be really useful if, like, another quirk that Izuku had, maybe the second or third users, was, like, some kind of infrared vision. He does have danger sense, but that'll only get you so far, because danger sense only kind of lets you know when there's, like, a danger in the immediate vicinity, and maybe if, like, Muscular's about to punch you, like, when his fist is, like, 2 feet away from your face, it's like, danger sense, you know, spidey sense, you know, and he jumps away. So if he had some sort of, like, X-ray vision or infrared vision, you know, can sense body heat, like thermal vision or something like that, that would be really cool if he had that ability, but he doesn't. So he has to be very careful with the smoke screen. Something else from the last chapter I wanted to mention, two things actually. One is just the fact that the Vestiges of One for All can now appear at whatever time they want, apparently, and just help out Izuku. So Izuku at any given time could just be like, hey, was that too much smoke, you know, sixth user N? And then N could appear as a ghost and just be like, yes, you overused it too much. It's okay. Just think of your quirks as tools, Deku. And we had that really cool, interesting, you know, panel where they were all, like, drawn on him like tools, like a smoke grenade, and a walkie-talkie for the danger sense, and a jetpack for float, and a rope for black whip. I really like that idea. For a split second there, I'm not even kidding you, when I was reading that, and, you know, Horikoshi drew that panel with Izuku decked out in all the gear, before I read the dialogue and I understood that that was symbolism, I assumed the second or third users had the ability to make, like, jetpacks on Izuku's back. That's what I originally thought. Like, oh my god, does the third user of One for All have, like, a mechanical quirk? Like, you can turn your body into machines? That's awesome! I'm like, oh, okay, no, it's just a visual representation of Izuku utilizing One for All. I get it, but oh my god, that, like, got me really hyped for a second there. Now, we might actually get a little bit of a hint at what the second or third users' quirks were in this chapter. I don't think it's going to be too much longer until Horikoshi just reveals that. All Might knows about it, Izuku knows about it, even Izuku's mom finds out about it in this chapter. It seems like, yeah, that mystery of One for All is slowly, you know, fading away, and more people are learning about it. It's not something the general public knows about yet completely, but it's like more people are learning about it, and that's actually not a bad thing, because since more people know about the quirk, maybe more people can help Izuku out. And also, it could be a detriment, but it could be like, you know, you tell someone about One for All from a different perspective, and it's like, oh, okay, well, can't you just do this and this with it? And it might have been something that Izuku or All Might never really figured that you could do with the quirk, and it's like a different perspective. It's like, oh, we never thought of that. That's an interesting idea, you know? So we'll see where that goes. We also get some students from Ketsubutsu High appearing in this chapter. So we already had, I forget the guy's name with the earthquake quirk, the tremor quirk, and then the one that has the telescopic quirk that just allows her to hide her body inside of herself. Turtleneck was her name. But we get Todeki, who is Boomerang Man, and we get Makabe, who is Mr. Smith. Now, these were characters that appeared during the provisional license exam arc. Todeki was the dude that's Boomerang Man, that has the quirk to, like, change the trajectory of things in the air, which I think is an insanely useful quirk. So, like, Todeki could take out, like, a crossbow, fire the bolt, and then he could, like, move the bolt in the air at, like, a certain opponent, or, like, multiple opponents. So that's, like, a really powerful quirk there. And then Makabe, I forgot what his quirk was, but his hero name is Mr. Smith. And I thought that sounded really cool. So I thought, like, his quirk was, like, he's, like, something involving, like, a espionage. Like, he's a secret agent or something. You know, so maybe some kind of stealth quirk or something like that. But no, his ability is to stiffen things. So kind of like Kirishima's hardening, but not on himself and not on living things, but he can stiffen other things. So things that are malleable or whatever, he can stiffen to maybe not necessarily like rock lock, like lock it into place, but make it so it's not as malleable anymore. Okay, so like, you know, it would be the perfect counter for like Luffy's ability from One Piece, right, Barry? Zoro, what are you doing? Zoro, did you get lost again? This is a My Hero Academia video, buddy. Here you go. Maybe it's just because they both have green hair. I get confused. Anyway, yeah. So that would be like the perfect, weapon against Luffy, but it doesn't work on living things anyway. But anyway, yeah. So I'm kind of trying to understand why his hero name is Mr. Smith. At any rate, we get to see them. They show up in the chapter after Izuku drops everybody off, drops Muscular off at the police precinct. So he heads back to All Might, and we find out what's going on here. Okay, so after Izuku got his casts off at the hospital, the doctor comes in, Dr. Mario. Not even kidding, it's Dr. Mario. He walks in and he explains to Izuku, he's like, okay, you were told before that if you keep wrecking your arms like this, it was going to result in like permanent damage, and your arms might even become like paralyzed permanently. You might not be able to use your arms anymore. And so here's the thing, in certain translations, in one translation I read, it was the damage was all done externally, implying that, like, you know, the way that it was explained before is that it was like firecrackers going off in Izuku's arms, and that was the thing that was causing him damage. It was wearing down his bones and his muscle tendons and everything like that. That's a big deal. And so in that translation, it was like, well, you didn't have any damage internally this time. It was all dealt externally because of Shigaraki's attacks and, you know, All for One and everything like that, right? So it was all external damage. Still really bad, but, you know, it wasn't the same kind of damage as last time, so you're good. Now, in the official translation that I read, it was explained that it was the same kind of damage, except there were two things that were different here. The first thing that was different is when the firecrackers, so to speak, were going off in Izuku's arms, they were contained inside of himself. This time, the damage burst through to the surface, and on top of that, utilizing his black whip, he was basically wrapping and protecting and guarding his arms, adding an extra layer of support using black whip. So I imagine Izuku was probably doing most of that stuff subconsciously, like he wasn't actually aware of him doing that. It was just like, I'm just going to cushion my arms for more impact or whatever. So the doctor explains basically that you were lucky this time, but it's not like you're out of the woods yet. It's not like you can keep on doing this over and over and you're fine. He even mentions the deterioration of your tendons and your bones. That's still a thing. That's still happening. So you have to be very careful. It's just this time you were able to avoid it. And he also mentions that your body has changed somewhat since the last time this happened. So the last time it happened, Izuku was at 5% and he already had all that damage, and then now here we are at 45% mastery of One For All, and it's like you think, okay, this is, you know, way more than he had back at the Forest Camp arc, so this is like his arms shouldn't even be attached to his body right now. They should have just blown off with all the damage he's taken, which really did seem like that during the fight with Shigaraki. I was thinking, like, Izuku's gonna lose his arms or legs or something here. Like, there's so much damage. So this is maybe somewhat of a hint, and maybe you could say it's just One For All in general. The fact that Izuku has this quirk and he's beginning to awaken it has changed his body's structure and anatomy a little bit, maybe, to better deal with the damage and the kickback from using it. Or you could say that it's because of the second or third user's quirk that maybe gave him something that allows him to adjust his body more to this damage. Either some kind of hyper-acceleration healing quirk, or, you know, just some kind of quirk that can reinforce his bones or his muscles. Something along those lines, okay? Don't know for certain, but it was explained that, like, okay, this time you're good, and you've learned to, like, you know, fight better with using your quirk and cushioning it with Black Whip. That was such a clever idea on Izuku's part, but you still just can't keep fighting this way and expecting nothing to happen. He mentions the deterioration is still there, okay? So then you have a scene with Izuku's mother, who's at his bedside. Now, she does not show up very often in this story, and whenever she does, it's always to just be like, Izuku, would you please be more careful? Maybe you should stop being a hero, and, you know, your body is being wrecked. You know, you could be in, you know, like, a wheelchair and permanently paralyzed, you know, if you keep this up from what the doctors are telling me, so maybe you should be a little bit more careful. And you gotta really feel bad for Izuku's mom, like, you really do. Like, her son is only, like, 16 years old, and his arms are already completely wrecked, like, covered with scar tissue. He has, like, this giant, like, skin graft right now, I'm assuming, or some kind of massive scar on his arm, and he can't give up, though. And now she finds out all about One For All and All For One in this chapter. All Might kind of, you know, tells her everything, and he's like, yeah, okay, no more secrets. It's like, like, some other people already know about this, like Hawks and Vestiges already know about this. The world now knows what, at least what the name of One For All is, and so this is eventually probably just going to be revealed to everybody. So All Might explains the whole deal. He explains, like, probably in, like, more simple terms, like, hey, look, it's a quirk that's passed down from generation to generation. I was the 8th, Izuku's the 9th. It can only be passed down effectively to somebody that doesn't have a quirk, so it can, like, conform to that person's body. But because of that, the single strongest immortal villain in history, with a crap ton of quirks at his disposal, who has now been, like, basically revitalized with a new body, with Tomura's body, is now seeking out your son, and he basically has the ability to find him wherever he is now, because he still has the search quirk, you know, from Ragdoll. And so Izuku even has a line in this chapter, like, even the idea of All For One attacking this hospital where I'm staying at right now, even though it's a maximum security hospital, is not completely unheard of. Like, they literally broke out all these prisoners. They still have to wait for Tomura to reach 100%, and so that would be the smart thing to do before All For One does anything too insane, like, you know, wait for at least a couple of weeks or whatever for Tomura's power to reach 100% and he stabilizes. But still, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, he could attack right now. You feel so bad for her, because it's like, oh my god, my son is the target of this, like, immortal demon king? Oh, God. And so it's like, what do you even do as a mother? What do you even do about that, right? And so Izuku has to, we have some flashbacks when they were, you know, when Izuku was a little kid, and then we see the scene where Izuku's hugging his mom, and he's just like, I still need to fight. I need to make sure no one else dies. You know, I need to make sure there's no repeat of last time. And so he's like, I know what I have to do. I gotta leave UA. I can't go back to UA because that's gonna be such a risk. Even though they're taking way more security precautions, it doesn't matter how many security precautions UA takes. If All Might and Izuku stay there, and Izuku with One For All and everything, and if, you know, All For One finds out they're there, he will launch an all-out raid and assault on UA. And Izuku knows this, and All Might knows this. So it's like, okay, I can't go back to UA, I need to go on my own. And All Might stands up, and he's like, look, even though you're probably not going to want me to go with you because I'm weak, I'm gonna go with you. I simply will not take no for an answer. I'm going to help you do whatever you're going to do as a vigilante or whatever. I'm gonna help you do that, alright? So you gotta trust me. And so that's also the idea of the promise that All Might made to Izuku's mom. You know, I will protect him, I will watch over him. Kind of like All Might is becoming sort of like Izuku's, like, stepfather in this one particular instance, even though Izuku's dad is still alive, he's overseas, he has a job. You'd think he would have come home at some point. Well, actually, you know what? after this huge climactic final battle here, it was actually mentioned that there was a travel restriction, a travel ban placed on Japan, which makes a lot of sense considering that, like I said, the strongest villain in the entire world that we assume, I mean, there might be stronger villains out there somewhere, it's a big world, but it's like, All for One is here, he's amassed all these quirks, plus he broke out all these prisoners. You gotta make sure no one gets out of Japan and goes to the rest of the world, right, to cause even more havoc. Yeah, travel ban, that's like, oh yeah, we can all relate to that, right? So, before the travel ban was instituted, though, All Might actually express ordered this, like, special support item for Izuku called the Mid-Gauntlet. So now it's like, basically, it's like bands that just kind of wrap around Izuku's arm. We saw them when he was, like, standing on top of the Not Chrysler building. Really thought that they were going to go somewhere with that, by the way. Really thought that we were going to go to the United States or New York and Izuku was going to leave the country like All Might did when he started training. Like, I thought they were going to go with that, but it seems like not. They're staying in Japan for right now, and I guess they really can't leave even if they wanted to. I'm sure All Might could figure out, he could pull some strings and he could figure out a way for them to leave the country if they really needed to, but yeah, Izuku needs to stay in Japan right now for what we'll later find out what his plan is. So yeah, the Mid-Gauntlet. It's just like a support item, and All Might basically says, look, it'll definitely help you, but it's not designed to withstand 100% of your power, so you can't go 100 with it. But when it comes to at least 45, 50% of your power, it should be able to give you a great amount of, stress relief there, for your flesh and your bone and everything. So after defeating Muscular and dropping him off at the police station, Izuku returns to All Might, who's wearing some really badass threads. He's got like a leather jacket and sunglasses. So that implies right after they got out of the hospital, after Izuku had this heartfelt moment with his mother, and like, I'm going to leave UA, and I gotta go and take the fight to Tomura and All for One, and All Might's like, I'm gonna go with you, but first, we gotta go shopping. And Izuku's like, hell yeah, we gotta go shopping. And then cut to an early 90s montage with All Might and Izuku walking through the department stores. All Might's picking out, he's like doing the thing at the, coming out of the waiting room at the dressing rooms, and he's got the leather jacket, and he's like, yeah, All Might, that works for you. He puts on the shades, like, yeah, that's totally you. And then Izuku tries on the Mid-Gauntlet, and he's like, oh yeah, this works great. And so, because they have really cool new outfits in this chapter. I love it. So, Izuku lands in an alley where All Might was, and All Might was kind of coordinating everything. He's just like, all right, you go and patrol the rooftops, and I'll make sure everything's good down here. And then they spied Muscular, and then Izuku went to go fight him, and then Izuku returned to All Might, and he's like, okay, I'm good, I don't have any injuries, I can still move, we're good. It's at this time, Hawks and Best Jeanist call Izuku, and it's Best Jeanist, and it's really cool, because Best Jeanist is the one talking on the phone, and he kind of is using the phone like this, like he's holding the phone like this. Ah, yes, All Might, how is the situation with young Midoriya? Is he okay? And it's kind of interesting, because it's like, that's just Best Jeanist being very, like, fancy, and like, kind of a JoJo-esque character, honestly. I could see Best Jeanist as a JoJo character. He has that super long neck, and even his quirk could be a stand power very easily. In fact, there was a stand that I think can control fibers from clothing. I don't remember what it was called. It might have been in one of the parts I saw, or it might have been in... Wait, isn't that Jolene's stand? Stone Free? Doesn't it have the ability to control threads or something? I don't know. I guess I'll wait for part 6 to come out to really find out. But at any rate, Best Jeanist could be a JoJo's character. That's the point of this chapter that I wanted you guys to take away from it. Anyway, so they're talking about that, and their whole plan here, what it really comes down to is this. Izuku understands that All for One is looking for him. Now, he could go and hide and let All for One, go rampaging or whatever. But the smarter thing, I think, the practical approach they're doing is have Izuku be out there in public and taking out as many villains as he can, kind of drawing a little bit of attention to himself. That might actually be the gamble that we need to take All for One by surprise. Because it is now All Might, Izuku, Endeavor, Hawks, and Best Jeanist, the top 3 best heroes in Japan, and All Might, and Izuku, all working together to try to ambush and capture Tomura and kill him, is pretty much the idea. We have a scene with Gran Torino still in the hospital, and this is the scene where Gran Torino gives Izuku his scarf. It's all, bloody and shredded and everything, and that's the scene where Izuku tells him about Nana inside of the Vestiges of One for All, and just like, Nana told me to tell you that she's doing okay and say hi for me. And it's this really nice moment with Gran Torino where he's in the hospital bed, like barely awake, and he's like, she's crying even in the afterlife, huh? Listen, kid, don't think about it too much, sometimes death can even be a salvation, don't, like, when the time comes down to it and it's you facing off against Tomura Shigaraki, if you have the chance to kill him, you gotta do what you gotta do, is basically what Gran Torino's telling him. You know, like, death can also be a form of salvation in this regard. Like, everybody is kind of telling Izuku in no uncertain terms, it's like, look, we understand you don't want to kill him. We understand you want to be a hero. But it's like, if it's looking like things are going south and you have the opportunity to end it, take that opportunity, Izuku. And in fact, the way Gran Torino's speaking about it is like, don't even overthink it. Like, you take that opportunity if you have to, right? Because this is dealing... And, you know, that's like the big debate here is just like, you know, is Izuku's idea to save Tomura, is that childish? Is that too optimistic? Like, this is a real... Not a real-world scenario. There are not actual supervillains fighting it out in Japan right now. But, like, you know what I mean. Like, you know, in a real-world scenario, if that did happen, it's like... Yeah, you want to save his soul and make sure that he can, be redeemed or whatever. Like, that's all well and good. That's very optimistic of you, but it's probably not going to end out that way. And I think Horikoshi's definitely going to handle that moment where, at the moment in the story, I really couldn't tell you if it's going to end with Tomura dying or not. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't really know which direction he's going to take it, because if Horikoshi took it in the direction of, like, Izuku tries his best to try to save Tomura, he does everything he can, and he just can't, and he has to end it because he has to end it, I could see it going in that direction, right? But I just don't know. So, at any rate, yeah, he's basically now with All Might and Best Jeanist and Hawks, and they're working. Endeavor as well, but we don't really get a lot of Endeavor in this chapter. They're all working together. And so the plan is, like, okay, we're going to be the ones to strike first. Okay, because I bet All For One probably thinks that we're going to be hiding away, like we're going to protect Izuku and let them make the first move. But no, we're making the first move. We're jumping around Japan and we're taking out all these prisoners that have escaped, all the, like, Tartarus and everything, and we're, throwing them back in prisons, and then that'll draw attention to Tomura, and then they'll come to them, and that's the idea. And then I can imagine this really cool scene maybe where Izuku leaves again. He stops and talks to All Might for a little bit, but then danger sense picks up again, and he leaves to go fight another escapee. And so that might be a moment where Izuku's fighting on an escapee, and then boom, all of a sudden the League shows up, and then it's like, Izuku Midoriya, you thought you could just, take away all these prisoners and erase everything we've done, but we will win. It's like Dabi's there and everybody. And then right before they attack Izuku, boom, Endeavor shows up with the Hell Flame right off to the side, and then Hawk swoops in, and then Best Jeanist restrains everybody. Like that would be a cool scene, and I think we're going to get something like that coming up. But yeah, that's My Hero Academia, chapter 309, really solid one. And the last page is just Endeavor, Hawks, Best Jeanist, All Might, and Izuku taking the scarf and just being like, it's time to pay back the League. It's time to cash that check. So I'm like, all right, they are dedicated to this, and we're going to see where it's going to go. Next chapter, I have a feeling, at least I have a suspicion, we're going to cut away from Izuku for a little while. We're going to cut back over to UA. We're going to see what the other students are up to. I think we're going to do that for a few chapters, and then we're going to cut back to Izuku fighting another villain, and then that might tie back into the League. But now we have this moment where it's like, okay, Izuku did not leave the country, but he's still on his own with All Might. Not on his own, he is with All Might and everybody. But then the other students are all still at UA, so it's like you have this main cast of characters. I don't think, I mean, this is very interesting with Izuku, but I don't want this just to become the Izuku show. I don't want, like, the whole point of My Hero Academia is kind of it has this really large ensemble cast of characters, 20 of them, and now we have, also Shinso that's joining the hero course. I'm assuming Shinso is going to join, Izuku's spot in Class 1A, and I want to see what's up with them. I want to see what's going up with them and balance that a little bit, and you could include Izuku a little bit, but you have to figure out this way to make it work, so we'll see where that goes, of course. And of course, like, Izuku did not want his friends to be in danger either, which is why he left, but it might end up that thing where Izuku's fighting a villain, and then boom, Todoroki and Tsuyu and Ochako show up, and Sero's there, and like, guys, I left UA so you'd be safe. He's like, yeah, but we're still heroes. We'll protect you, man. Something like that. So we'll see where that goes, definitely. But yeah, I want to see where this goes. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking and Barry signing out. Later.